much, Juan. Thank you so much, and for all of you for coming out. I wanted to say a couple of words on behalf of SAFE, Solidarity Against Fascism Everywhere. So we are an intersectional anti-oppressive committee of folks here in the GTA on stolen indigenous land, the land of the Huron-Wendat, the land of the Petun First Nations, and the list goes on and on and on. We have come together with one explicit purpose, that when white nationalists, white supremacists, and fascists, like we see in Charlottesville, like we see in Latin America, like we see all over the world show their face, we are there to confront them! I'd like to invite up our next speaker, Kessler, who is here to speak about what it means to be a member of a marginalized community who is also working ardently to fight fascism. Please welcome him!
All right, to be perfectly frank, I found out I was speaking at this event about 2 hours ago, so I'd made a promise to myself that going forward I wasn't going to do any more of this off-the-cuff talking, because now was sort of the time to get perhaps a little more serious and start writing things down before I say them in front of crowds of people. Sorry. Off-the-cuff is what you get. So in the interest of not taking up too much time, there's two things that I want to talk about primarily. Thankfully, I don't have to talk about one of them for very long, because the speakers, the wonderful speakers who came up before me, have, I think, made the point quite well and quite firmly that we're not talking about something that has emerged out of nowhere, or even something that has emerged in the past year or the past 2 years. What we're talking about in a lot of these cases are systems of intersectional oppressions. What we're talking about is systems of marginalization and exploitation that work together in order to create an environment where white supremacy is so normalized that people can go about their days passively supporting it and never consider themselves to be white nationalists at all. The majority of the people in Toronto who activists and anti-fascists and community members have gone out to confront are very indignant about being called Nazis. They're very indignant about being called fascists. They're white rights activists. They're men's rights activists. They are against Islamofascism. They are against the tyranny of leftists. They are a variety of identities. You would almost think that they have a problem being labeled something they don't identify with. But I was asked to speak more specifically about being whatever a marginalized person is, whatever that means, and being part of these struggles. And I think the most important thing that people need to recognize about that sort of ties into this idea that this didn't come out of nowhere. Did you know, for instance, the first large-scale alt-right gathering in Toronto happened not far from here, over a month before Trump was elected. It happened right over there, outside Sydney Smith Hall, and it was a gathering of, yes, of violent fascists, of white nationalists, but also of MRAs, of anti-black racists, people who came out specifically to be like anti-Black Lives Matter people, and it was transphobes. The event that they put together, the first large-scale alt-right gathering in Toronto that I'm aware of, was put together specifically to oppose transgender students and community members holding a peaceful demonstration to educate other members of this community about the struggles that we were facing and why we were upset at certain comments that certain professors were making. And I'm not going to name said professor because I'm pretty sure this guy's getting off on his own notoriety at this point. At that event on the 5th of October 2016, the transgender activists who showed up to many of us without much experience in this sort of work showed up to deplatform this event before many of us even knew words like deplatform. Those who stood in solidarity with us on that day were members of the Black Liberation Collective at the University of Toronto, who have been for some time working with groups like Black Lives Matter and activists like Desmond Cole, working against the violence being committed against Black Torontonians by the Toronto Police Department. You'll notice several members of that police department have decided to show up to this gathering. In fact, perhaps a few more than a gathering of this size and this character really warrants. Every month since this year began, there has been an alt-right rally outside City Hall in Toronto, with the exception of the past couple of months where their organizing appears to have fallen so far into shambles that they've been unable to do so. Don't talk too loud. We have had great successes in terms of our organizing in this city. We've accomplished remarkable things, truly. We've created a state at this point where Islamophobes themselves are admitting openly that every time they come to organize and they come to do public demonstrations, they are, and I believe I'm quoting Ronnie Cameron here, dominated by the opposition. And that is something we should celebrate. We should also celebrate that people who are concerned about police activities like the SRO program have also won a victory. And I think many of us are very happy to hear that Jaggi Singh was released in Montreal. But though the far right in Toronto specifically and Southern Ontario in general is currently experiencing something of a slump, I think it's important for us to not be complacent now, because when these sorts of things are in the news, when horrible tragedies like Charlottesville occur, and when people are marching down the street waving Nazi party flags, flying Confederate flags, people take notice, people pay attention, people are outraged. And people should be outraged. Any decent person should be outraged by that. But when they're not marching around waving swastika flags, when they're having these gatherings saying, we're not white nationalists, we're concerned citizens, we're concerned about Islamic terror, we're concerned about anti-police sentiment, we're concerned about the transgender feminist lobby trying to deny freedom of speech, people seem more inclined to go along with that sort of narrative. And there isn't a whole lot of opposition to that sort of thing. So when I'm asked to talk about what it's like to be a marginalized person who's involved in this sort of thing, the primary character of that experience is spending much of your time feeling like you're screaming into the void for someone to pay attention to the things you're seeing that are happening, and people looking at you like you don't know what you're talking about. Because it's convenient for those of us who call ourselves anti-fascist or who calls ourselves social justice activists or however we want to identify in that regard. It's convenient for us when they're openly attacking everybody, when they're marching through the street, when they're causing random terror. In some ways, that's more convenient for us. But as the other speakers have been talking about, and as I want to emphasize now, these dynamics and these systems of oppression are constantly grinding on and on, even when they're not in the news, even when they don't come under swastika flags or Confederate flags. And yes, long before Donald Trump, the president, was ever an idea that anyone had ever had. And they're going to remain that way. They're going to remain that way long after President Trump has been relegated to the garbage dump of history. It is good that we are outraged. It is good that so many are outraged, but it is not enough to be outraged. We have created some truly impressive things here. We've done some good work, but that work has to continue. We have to keep talking to people. We have to keep having the uncomfortable conversations with our families, with our friends, and we've got to start putting some pressure on the people like the Toronto Police Department, like the people in Queen's Park, and like the people at City Hall who have been standing by while these things happen. And in the case of the Toronto Police Service, time and time again, have come out to support the fascist organizing, to defend the fascist rallies, and to inflict disproportionate brutality and force against those who have come out to oppose white nationalism and Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. This can't be allowed to continue.